5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Main engine ignition and liftoff of the Atlas V rocket with LRO Alcross, America's first step of a lasting return to the moon.
A spectacular moment of geek today as America headed back to the moon for the first time in more than a decade, simultaneously sending two different probes into the stratosphere. The first probe's mission is to map out possible lunar colonies, so moon pioneers of the future can stay up there for months at a time. The mapping they're doing uses technology like a cosmic ray telescope and a laser altimeter. The first probe will also photograph all of the boots and tongs and straps and cameras and cars on cinder blocks and other stuff that we left up on the moon between 1969 and 1972. The list of lunar debris that we've left there from our moon missions in the past reportedly includes 4 containers designed to hold astronaut poop. Not kidding. The second probe's mission is to shoot a rocket into the moon's south polar region this October. That's expected to produce a 6-mile-high plume of debris, which the probe will then analyze for traces of water before ending its own life in the same kamikaze-style crash-me-into-the-moon fashion. So we're scouting for cheap real estate, we're photographing our old litter, and we're blowing the place up. It's very neighborly of us, don't you think? Joining us now is Derek Pitts, the chief astronomer at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. Mr. Pitts, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you.
I have to ask you the least scientifically important thing first, if you don't mind.
Of course.
How come we left all that junk up there?
Well, the real reason why we left it there is not just to hold a place for us against all the other aliens that might come there. The reason why we left the stuff there really is because it was extra weight that we really didn't want to have to bring back in this spacecraft. We wanted to minimize the amount of weight there was so that we can bring more rocks back. And so you leave the stuff you don't really need and just bring back the stuff you do, namely the people and the rocks.
When they're looking for places where people could stay for months at a time on the moon's surface, are they looking at some of the landing sites that we have already been to the other times that we have sent people to the moon? Is that why we're going to be back there photographing those spots, seeing if we want to go back there?
The real reason why we're photographing the moon entirely, remapping the moon at a very high resolution and imagery, is so that we can find the best spots of the greatest interest and find the safest landing spots. You have to realize, Rachel, when we went before, a lot of that landing stuff was done by the seat of the pants of the pilots who flew the spacecraft there. So a lot of the final selection of the location where they actually put it down was done by the pilot himself. In this case, we want to minimize the risk by being able to map very carefully the surface of the moon and identify the best places to land.
Now, what about this part of the mission that's going to happen in October? We're going to shoot a giant rocket into the surface of the moon, create a plume 6 miles high, test the plume, and then kill the probe that did the testing. That seems very ornate.
Well, it might, but this is actually the easiest way to analyze the soil very quickly. We can use sunlight to reflect off of the material that gets blown up into the up above the crash location, and we can analyze it to see what's there.
Well, are we looking for something in particular? I know that water is obviously one of the main things that they're worried about trying to find if we are going to have a sustained presence on the moon, because water weighs a lot and it's hard to bring it up from Earth, right?
That's right. Yes, it's very expensive. You know, it costs about $50,000 per pound of anything to get up into space. And water is actually particularly heavy at 8 pounds per gallon. That's a very, very high expense. So the better thing to be able to do, as we've learned with the International Space Station, is make it on location or be able to find it there already.
It does seem like, as I said, a little unneighborly to shoot a rocket into the moon just in order to test the debris cloud once it blows that up. Is there a plan B for doing this sort of thing if it doesn't work, or is this a one-shot and you're done sort of deal?
Well, let's see. There's 2 ways to see that, actually. If it turns out that the first probe, for some reason, can't crash into the moon, I mean, the second spacecraft, if that can separate that one and crash that, other instruments will be watching that will be able to make some of the same determinations, hopefully. But again, this is sort of the easiest way to do this, rather than actually sending people to do the examination in situ, right in the location. So if we can do this, it's less expensive, it's just as effective, much less risky, and gives us all the information, or a lot of the information we need.
Derek, I know that it's not just gravity that's different on the moon than Earth. I understand there are temperature swings of like over 600 degrees Fahrenheit between day and night on the moon. Is that true? And if we did want to have people up there for months at a time, do we have the technology to mitigate those kinds of massive temperature swings?
Actually, you'd be surprised to learn probably that we do have the technology to mitigate that, and we can go back to the technology, not really go back to, but look at the technology that was used during the Apollo missions. The astronauts actually were very comfortable in their enclosed environments, those spacesuits, and the spacesuits had the capability to mitigate that temperature. And you're right, the temperature swing is very big. So it's anywhere from 220 degrees plus in the sun to maybe as low as 400 degrees below zero on the cold side and the shadow side. So there is that big swing, and we can figure out how to do that. The real issue, of course, is how do we make everything comfortable for long-term stays? And it is turning out that we have the capability to create that technology. In fact, we see it being employed at International Space Station already, where we have, coming up as soon as the next space shuttle launches, as many as 13 people living in a shirt-sleeve environment very comfortably.
Derek Pitts, Chief Astronomer with the Franklin Institute, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'm sorry for making you talk about astronaut poop.
That's quite